I've been thinking about what we mean when we say the word single player. It's been on my mind for a couple years now, and it all started when I played The Witness for the first time.
It was a few years ago, probably not long after it had come out, and I tried it because I'd heard some amazing things about it from reviewers online, and having played Portal to the point of speedrunning, I was looking for a different kind of puzzle. For those of you who haven't heard of it before, The Witness is a 2016 puzzle game made by Jonathan Blow, the man behind indie darling and commercial success Braid. In The Witness, you walk around a possibly abandoned island solving grid-shaped puzzles presented to you on panels, and as the game continues through natural exposure to these shapes and patterns, you begin to uncover places within the environment where these grids have also formed, which unlocks deeper mysteries and more hidden paths. It's presented in such a way where the game relies a lot on context clues, deductive reasoning, and visual learning, so that by the end of the game, you come out of it being able to look at parts of the world in a different way, and alter your perspective on how you see the stuff around you. At least that's what I'm told was supposed to happen. For me, the puzzles seemed random, unsolvable, and using a logic that I couldn't for the life of me tap into. I would spend hours in one area, too stubborn to go and try a puzzle somewhere else, but unable to progress as I randomly tried to brute force my way through what I could. This went on for a couple of days, until one day I happened to be sitting in a Discord call with a friend of mine, complaining about a particularly difficult puzzle I'd been stuck on for the past hour or so, and he asked to take a look at it. So I shared my screen, explained how the game worked, and 5 minutes later he'd solved it. So while I was exploring the more philosophical questions presented by the game and explaining my interpretation of them, he was solving the practical puzzles so that we could actually progress together. He'd explain a puzzle I couldn't understand, and I would explain these quotes and stories we were hearing that he didn't. And it wasn't until 3 or 4 hours into the session that I realised something. See, a big theme of The Witness is loneliness, the idea of having to figure out your own unique interpretation of not only the puzzles, but what the game was trying to say. It's a deeply personal journey about learning and understanding and the individual's perspective. And we'd turned it into a co-op game. Now some people might accuse us of cheating or going against the developer's wishes, but I'd argue against that. What I would argue we did was embrace the theme behind the game to such an extent that both of us were literally looking at it from another person's perspective. A perspective that couldn't have existed if both of us had played the game separately. Instead, we went on an adventure together and we experienced those feelings together. The highs and euphoric moments of cracking a challenge, the frustration of getting stuff wrong, and those quiet moments of introspection where we just stood and listened to the world around us. And by the end of the game, something amazing happened. I was solving the puzzles and he was listening to the audio logs. Our two very parallel trains of thought had eventually come together into a single track that allowed both of us to experience this game in a way we never would have before.
And together, we finished the game later that night. So there's definitely an argument to be made that The Witness is strictly a single player experience that we just played incorrectly. But there are some games out there that sell themselves as single player stories, yet exist within a multiplayer framework. For example, Journey. Journey's main focus is on an individual climbing up a mountain, but it's enhanced by the fact at any corner you can meet with someone on the same pilgrimage as you, and through completely non-verbal communication, the pair of you can continue up the path together.
And while it doesn't necessarily add anything to the experience, there's no shared loot or the encounters don't become easier, you create this sense of attachment with someone as you both work towards the same goals for the brief period of time you're together. This shared experience is something no other medium has. While you and someone can watch a movie together, or read a book, or listen to an album, you can't truly experience it together. Whereas in gaming you can. Take something like a FromSoft game. You're largely left alone on your journey, but with the ability to summon people when the going gets tough. But even summoning is part of the challenge since it requires resources to do. You can't just open a menu and hit invite. You also have to be in the same area, so if you want to play with a friend, you have to be roughly progressing at the same pace. As a result, it creates a situation where you're not only fueled by your own desire to get past particularly difficult sections, but by the fact you know you're not doing it alone. It feels less like a Herculean task when you know you have a friend that you can call on and contribute to this story together. The summoner gets a sense of happiness and pride having beaten a boss, and the summoned feels the same for having made even the smallest mark in someone else's experience. And as time's gone on, the idea of sharing experiences with people has gone even further. It was first shown with Let's Plays and more recently live streaming that there's a clear market for it. And with games like Life is Strange True Colors that allow the audience to have an input in the decisions made along the course of the game, there's clearly something that attracts people to experiencing games alongside other people, even if they aren't the ones who are directly playing it. There's this desire to see a game you love through a fresh pair of eyes, or to find a like-minded community who enjoy the same thing you do. The amount of times I've watched streamers that I love play games that I've already played, just so I can watch them experience all these unique things for the first time, is impossible to count. For me, it comes back to a time where people would gather around fires and we'd share stories, except rather than fires, it's computer monitors. And rather than sharing a group of stories, we are all literally experiencing one together.
There's a clear desire to spend time virtually with people, and over the past few years, while it seems the world outside our windows becomes smaller, emptier, and more hostile, the worlds inside our monitors have grown and grown. But now, even those experiences aren't limited to just games with online options. Thanks to streaming, YouTube, and online communities, we no longer have to experience any story in isolation, and it means we can share these stories we love with those around us. It shows that just because a game has a single player, doesn't mean that you have to play it alone.